I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're gonna pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu. This news, it bounced around all of last summer of 2023. People were saying, oh, season 4 of The Mandalorian is going to be a movie. Oh, they're making a Mando movie, and it's going to be separate from Dave Filoni's project. And, you know, it's finally come to light that those rumors were true. So congratulations to those leakers. This wasn't the only major piece of news that we found out in the article, however, because at the very end of the article, they buried the lead because we're getting an Ahsoka Season 2, and that's currently in development by Dave Filoni. So this is groundbreaking news. It's so groundbreaking that we're dedicating this entire episode to talking about just this, 4 or 5 sentence worth of article here, and we're going to spend our time speculating on where this news is going to take us in the future. But I say us because I'm not alone. Joining me today is the Beskar Brawler himself, Colin Archer.
Man, Carter, I'm so excited about this. I saw this news article. I can't take credit. I'm sure you saw it before I did, but as soon as I saw it, I sent it to you on Twitter. And man, my mind has been reeling ever since, thinking about every detail of this movie.
I know. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's, we're going to get into how successful we think this movie is going to be, how well received it's going to be, yada, yada, yada. We just don't have a lot of information right now. I mean, if you go read that article on StarWars.com, it really is a couple sentences. And only 2 of those sentences have any kind of, facts or meat to them. The others are quotes about the production.
Right. And so there's not much to it, but that's not going to stop me from speculating on everything that has to do with this.
I've got to come out of the gate and say that this name is flat out stupid. It makes me mad that this is the name. And so I'm very excited for the project. There is absolutely no reason to misconstrue what I'm saying in that I'm not excited for The Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm only very upset that they're trying to name it The Mandalorian and Grogu, and I hope that that name is a placeholder or that it evolves, because these are not superhero movies. Star Wars has a naming convention. Other than Solo, we know that every Star Wars movie to come out has not been on the nose with characters' names. It's not Iron Man 2. It's a sentence that references what happens in the movie. I mean, even The Rise of Skywalker includes a name, but at least there's another word there other than names.
Right. It goes to the narrative of what the movie is. So, and it's just this name alone that has me thinking so much about what the concept of this movie actually is versus what people want it to be. And I mean, I could spend a lot of time talking about just that topic alone.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that the name could be leading us down a direction where this is very character focused, like the Solo movie. I mean, Solo, named after Han Solo, is very character focused.
Well, and I want to, you're exactly right. And I want to go even down a little bit deeper than that. On the outset, Grogu is a children's character. It's totally children oriented. Mm-hmm. And so I want to go out on a limb, and I'll make the declaration right here that this movie isn't going to be, I mean, it'll have serious elements to it, but it's not going to be some end all, just one scene of badassery going to the one scene of badassery. This is going to be like, if we had a split, if we have a spectrum of Mando doing really cool things and lighthearted things of Grogu eating frogs and being cute, right?
Right.
That this is going to be like a 60-40, 70-30 of some sort of lightheartedness with Grogu interspersed with really cool moments.
I think you're right on the nose on that, or I think you're right on the money on that one. I think that if I had to guess tonally, just based on the title and what we know about these characters, the movie will probably land somewhere around The Phantom Menace in tone. You spend a lot of time with young Anakin. There's a lot of levity because he's a child. There's going to be a lot of levity because of Grogu. There's fart jokes in The Phantom Menace. You get this extended pod race scene that is high stakes, but it's not like gritty or dark, or it's action-packed in a more fun, raucous way. And I think that that's what we'll be seeing in this upcoming film. I totally agree with you. It's not going to go down Andor route. It's never going to be as dark as Andor or anything like that.
Right. And I think there's going to be some major implications to this movie. Another declaration I'll make is Grogu's going to talk in this one.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I absolutely
it's going to
agree
be
with that.
like, Dad, I'm here to help you. Dad, this. It's going to be a father-son relationship focused first words.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And
And we have a quote from Favreau that we're going to get into in a little bit about that, because that gave us, I think, a little bit of news.
I know you got your notes, Carter. I'm so sorry if I'm jumping all over the place.
Oh, no, you're not.
I'm so excited about this.
I do want to talk about the title a little bit more, because I think the decision making here is clear. As much as I hate the title, Disney's a business. They want to make money, and I know that they looked at it and they said, well, we got the TV show named The Mandalorian. It's the most popular thing we have. We're going to put a movie out about the most popular thing we have, which is The Mandalorian. We're not going to change the name. And if they could have gotten away with calling it The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, they would have done that. If they could have gotten away with it, they would have done it. Well, so more people would have been drawn to the theater.
And so Grogu is a good name. My kids still call him Baby Yoda, but they also say Grogu. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and then my kids haven't watched Mandalorian all the way through. They might have seen snips and bits and YouTube shorts and whatever else. I don't let them watch TikTok. But this Grogu, I remember there was a lot of discussion when that name was revealed, and some people gave it pause. I never did, really. And, I mean, that's who the character is.
Yeah, it was a very original Star Wars
And so
name.
my point is that the kids are perfectly fine with that name.
Sure. No, I agree. I think they are, but obviously Baby Yoda is going to draw in a bigger crowd. But I think that's where the naming comes from. And that's where we've gotten, all of the Star Wars TV released is just names. And that's because of the marketability and how easy it is to market Obi-Wan Kenobi markets itself. The Book of Boba Fett markets itself because those characters, people are aware of them in the same way that people are aware of. I really like the Mandalorian TV show. I don't know what Ahsoka is. I don't know what an Andor is, but the Mandalorian TV show is great.
And to roll right on with that, we're just coming off the year of Barbenheimer. 2 movies that made insane amounts of monies that had that same marketability. I mean, Barbie's a lot more marketable than
Grogu. I don't know.
but kind of my fantasy is hopefully there's some market in this where my son comes to me and says, Dad, I want to go see the Grogu movie. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm going to be so over the moon when they say that.
Right,
And take that fantasy a step further. So many people are talking about that Barbie movie. So many people are talking about Oppenheimer that I want the same thing for Star Wars. I want people to come back and say, oh, you need to go see that Grogu movie so you can see what happens in there. It's a really big deal. And I'm talking about from a kid's perspective.
Right. I'm wondering, I'd love to be a fly on the wall or behind the scenes to know how many ad clicks this has gotten, just this article. Because, people mentioned it to me today at work. Obviously, Star Wars is always a topic of conversation in the office or day-to-day when you're talking to random people because it's such a big thing. But it's not like I was getting day-to-day someone saying, oh, did you hear this Ahsoka news? Or did you hear about Andor? But people talked about this today at work. And so how big of an impression did this launch and marketing make? I'm not sure, but I think it's big, and I'd really love to see just the number of article clicks that this thing got.
I really would.
Because I saw it everywhere. But also I'm in a Star Wars bubble,
I have a few different Twitter accounts that look at some different things that slightly overlap and this and that. And, in the general science fiction stuff, this was very prominent, more prominent than I have seen. In that organic social media sharing this and that of people talking about it. And I'd say it's even more popular than some negative news that's been out about some other stuff.
Well, sure. And, it's worth mentioning that there has been some negative news with Star Wars in the press, and we're not going to go into any of the elements in that, but that this announcement coinciding at this time, very likely to try and help get beyond all of that negativity that's been swirling around.
Another factor what I want to say about this, the naming convention of this, is I don't think it's untoward to say that season 3 of Mandalorian, and this is with that hindsight perspective, right? Is that Grogu was kind of left on the table. That was more of a Mandalorian focused, and we all, trust me, we want Grogu as a Mandalorian. And, you know, that is his path. I'm all for that. You know, we can have a fun discussion about if his had some sort of Luke Skywalker Jedi path. But there's a lot of canon issues with that, right?
Right.
And we don't really want to go down that in this discussion unless you want to. But what I'm saying is like, we need some more meat. We need some Grogu meat on the bones here.
Yeah.
Than was coming out with. And then we saw in season 3 of Mando.
I agree, and I think we will get that. You know, we know from just behind the scenes discussions that there's been a lot has come to light about why Grogu had been kind of shoehorned into season 3, and that's because Favreau originally didn't want him back yet. He had intentions for him to come back, but you know, Disney rushed it, and they said you need to get him back. And again, a lot of it's money motivated because half of that show is Grogu, or more than half of that show is Grogu.
Yeah.
So we keep going through the article, and we see the next sentence gives us the details surrounding who's making the film. It's going to be a Favreau movie. He's directing it, but it's produced by him, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni. And it's going into production in 2024. And so the first part of that I want to talk about is the year of production. So it's going into production this year, which is a big deal. They have a lot of the elements they already need because obviously costume design and casting and all of this eminently easier because these people are already around.
Yeah, very good year for Pedro Pascal.
Great year for Pedro Pascal. It's been the decade of
I
Pedro
don't want to see his
Pascal
tax
so
bill.
far.
I do not want to see his tax bill this year for 2024.
I don't either. But with it coming out in 2024, a lot of people are speculating 2026, like May of 2026, that we may even, some people are speculating it may be another 2 Star Wars movies in the same year thing, where we get Grogu, the Mandalorian Grogu in May of 26, and then the Rey film in December of 26.
Again, my excitement is getting the best of me. I think objectively and rationally, that is true. But my optimistic doofus self is saying that this is going to be a Christmas movie next year.
I don't think Christmas 2025 is not that
holiday
ambitious. Movie. That's ambitious, but that's not like going to come out in May of 2025, which is essentially impossible.
Reality is, I think this movie is going to be, here's like my headcanon of events. You know, Filoni's made this creative director. He's got, Disney is at this valley, and they're like, we need some cash. We need money in the bank. This is a low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. And Filoni, and with teaming up with Favreau, is they've been hatching this Grogu egg for years now. COVID got in the way, right? And all the lockdowns and this and that. And they finally are, through the circumstances of the valleys and being the creative director, are open the floodgates, and they're able to let these people realize how good of an idea. My overly optimistic self is thinking that they're sitting on some massive gold mine of an idea that is going to be like, they're so in tune with this thing that they're going to make it this year and be able to put it out and have this like 2020. We talked all podcasts about how great 2024 is going to be with this Mando movie, and my overly optimistic is that 2025 is going to be with this movie even better.
Yeah, I think that 2025 would be a great release date because obviously I don't want to see Star Wars movies get pushed back or overlap in any way, and so I think that's optimistic, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Now, you mentioned Dave and his involvement, and I want to say that I'm happy he's involved. I'm even more happy that he's not directing this, and I'll tell you why, because I love Dave Filoni, and so that may come as a shock to people who listen to this consistently, but Star Wars coming back to the theaters for the first time since 2019, I was a little concerned when we have directors without a big pedigree bringing Star Wars back. And so now we have someone like Jon Favreau who's been making movies for decades. He knows exactly what goes into big budget films, the schedules that you need to have on these kinds of films. He's familiar with working with these actors in ways that Dave just isn't. I mean, Dave was on set for The Last Jedi, learned some things from Rian Johnson, did a wonderful job directing Ahsoka, did a wonderful job writing Ahsoka, but he still needs some more on-set film experience, in my opinion. And so to see that his movie's still getting made, that Dave's still going to get to do his thing in a few years, and that John is going to be making this movie, I think is a very wise decision from Disney.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. Again, it seems to me like exactly what you said, the best elements are being utilized here to make the best product that they can.
And you can say what you want about Jon Favreau, but there's a lot of directors out there that come with their own baggage or they come with their own style. And Jon Favreau has never really felt like that kind of director to me. He makes a lot of different things, and he might be kind of stuck in this like nerdy-ish genre by doing Iron Man and the MCU and Star Wars, but none of that has a Jon Favreau flavor. Like, I can point to a Wes Anderson movie. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit, but everyone knows what a Tarantino or a Wes Anderson movie looks like. You can't just say, oh, that's a Jon Favreau film, obviously, because of this, this, and this.
Right.
I think his only hallmark is that he's in all of his movies.
Yep.
And so I think that having Favreau do the directing is going to be a good thing.
Yeah, quintessentially so. I think it's going to be fantastic.
So the next thing that I want to talk about in this article is the next line. We get a quote from Jon Favreau. I'm totally could be reading into this, but it never feels like they do anything unintentionally. And so the quote that he gives, he says, "The prospect of bringing the Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is extremely exciting." Now, are these like word games he's playing? Did he mean anything by the word apprentice? Because right now, there's no indication that that's like something that Mandalorians do. They call them foundlings, yada, yada, yada. Was he just trying to simplify this for the press, or does that mean something here?
Yeah, I think it's real easy to read into that. I mean, yeah, because he could have just, it seems to me just like a word that's a synonym of foundling.
Right. I mean, because foundling isn't really much of a word.
Yeah. If he said that, that would be like if you're, the press is talking to a nerdy guy, right? But he also has to talk to everybody. So he's talking to everybody. So he's saying the same thing, but in language that everybody's going to understand.
But for people who are familiar with the television show, and people who are familiar with the events of The Mandalorian, which is obviously the target audience, it's not like this movie is a homework movie. You've got to have seen the show because you're going to need to know who these characters are. But so many people have seen the show. I mean, it's a very popular show. It was the most watched show in the United States this year, the most streamed show in the United States this year. And so he can assume a little bit that the people he's talking to knows what he means when he says certain words, but why wouldn't he use the word son that has been used multiple times in the program itself? Why wouldn't he use, the word foundling that has been used multiple times in the show itself? And so apprentice just feels like there's something more going on here. We know Din's not force sensitive. We know that that's not the case. It's not like Grogu's training the force under him, but the word apprentice just really caught me right there, and I don't know if it has a meaning or not.
Yeah, I think it's real easy to associate that as like a Jedi apprentice. But, I mean, you can just as easily say that he's a Mandalorian apprentice. Grogu can't speak the oath, right?
Right.
But he has so much more to learn, and he's a fast learner. We saw him with the paintballs. And he's... You can also make other assumptions about this, and so many times in so many Star Wars movies... a Padawan has learned from a master. An apprentice has learned from a master. And so that seems to me that there's obviously going to be a sequence of Grogu learning some Mandalorian ways in this movie.
Yeah.
The concept
I'd agree with that.
Blowing
for
my
sure.
mind.
So I want to ask you what you think the movie's really going to be about, but I think that first we have to talk about the fact that Deadline reported yesterday that this is not going to be taking the place of Season 4. Filming will start in 2024 for the movie, but Season 4 is also going to be in production. Not specifically in 2024. We don't know when it's going to get made, whether it's going to come before the movie, after the movie, or who Season 4 of The Mandalorian is going to be about, or if they're both going to be about Mando. Well, there's a lot of hanging questions here. And so, with that knowledge that we're also having a Season 4 of the TV show, do you really think that the movie will be a continuation of the Season 3 plot lines?
No. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the plot of this one is in the title, and so if my pure speculation is, and I'd be willing to bet money on this that I'm not wrong, is all these people, writers, producers got together in a room and said, you know, the culmination, the big bad of this story arc is Thrawn. And so certain characters have to have milestones for their capabilities for this epic showdown that we want to have in this movie. And so what I believe this movie is primarily going to be about is Grogu achieving those milestones, so that and then something else in them, you know. And what I want to contrast this with is you know, season 3 felt like a very story driven over the arc of the whole season. Seasons 1 and 2, it had more of a
serialized feel,
but like Monster of the Month or Spaghetti Western or you know, gunslinging and this and that type of thing, right? And it's like, we're going to go kill this crate dragon, boom, dead, and then you move on to the next one and stuff like that. And so, I mean, like, they're not going to hop from story to story in a movie, right? And so that's what I kind of hope season 4 is going to be about. And you know, maybe there's some cost saving stuff. Maybe they're going to film the movie along with the TV show,
right?
And so they're going to have these milestones for these characters in the movie, where they go and do this self-actualized Grogu, who, I mean, and a thought popped in my head that I don't want to think about. What if Mando dies in this movie?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's okay. Okay. I'm open to him dying.
Me too, but I kind of want to have like a cynical perspective about it. And I understand anybody can be Mando, but it's still Pedro Pascal's character. And so, how much money is this guy going to make this year? I'm just like, man, I got kind of making an insane amount here. I kind of don't want to act anymore.
Right.
I don't know. And that's not true, I don't think. But, and I don't want to see the Mandalorian go away. You know, they'd spin it off into the Grogu show or something like that after it, because they're not going to do anything with that character, right? But does that answer your question?
I don't think so. I don't think it did.
My mind is all over the place. I apologize.
So you mentioned Thrawn at the beginning of that, and so we know from this article that Dave Filoni is still going to get his movie, and we know that Ahsoka season 2 is in production, and so at the end of the Mandalorian season 3, it really had a note of finality. Not that there couldn't be more adventures in the future, but that they're at their homestead, Mandalore's being rebuilt, Navarro's being rebuilt. You know, the story could end right here. Return of the Jedi style, you know, the future is just happy-go-lucky for everybody. And so, when we get to the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, are you feeling, you said Thrawn, do you feel like the movie is going to be more of a continuation of plot elements from Ahsoka Season 1, or do you think it's going to pick up more about Mandalore and threats in the Outer Rim like we saw in The Mandalorian Season 3?
Man, that's kind of complicated. I think it's an intermix of both. I really think it is. For that movie, you know, season 4, it's going to have like, I think there'll be adventures and stuff, serialized adventures like it is, but there's going to be this hint of Thrawn in the background, that he's the one pulling all the strings or something, you know. And we got Skeleton Crew in the mix too.
Yeah, we do. And what else I'll say is we don't know if 4's coming before or after, but there's always the potential that The Mandalorian and Grogu get their movie, and the Mandalorian TV show becomes Katie Sackhoff's thing, and that we start following Bo-Katan through season 4 of The Mandalorian and beyond. And so we have plot lines carrying that way. And as we've talked about, we learn at the end of the article that Ahsoka season 2 is getting made. Well, today Star Wars on Twitter posted a concept art photo for the show, and it shows Ahsoka and Sabine standing on the hand of the father in the exact same way that Baylan was. And so we know that Ahsoka season 2 will be following the Baylan plotline. Not to say that Thrawn's not involved in season 2, not to say there's not more plotline, but because of this one concept art shot, we now know that Ahsoka season 2 will have a big part of it spent around that plotline. And so there's the potential that Thrawn gets continued in The Mandalorian, like you're saying, only because the opposite will be true for Ahsoka, and that Ahsoka is going to continue the Baylan thing. All of the Thrawn elements for the Ahsoka show were just to set up what's going to happen in the Mandalorian movie. But I want to put a bow on all this to say that before yesterday, when we knew this movie was coming, we and every other Star Wars commentator ever was talking about Dave Filoni's movie culminating in the Thrawn crisis and Heir to the Empire and all of this thing. Well, now, as you said, between Dave Filoni's movie and Ahsoka Season 1, we're going to have, at minimum, Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka Season 2, Mandalorian Season 4, and the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So 4 projects where Thrawn is just hanging out in the galaxy without having the big confrontation that we expected in the Dave movie. So I think the Thrawn confrontation very reasonably could come in the Mandalorian stuff, and that Dave's movie is wholly something else now. We actually don't know what it's going to be. But I think most likely is that all of this is actually a build-up to Dave's movie where Thrawn fights the original 3 heroes, Luke, Leia, and Han. I think they're going to show up. I think because this sounds convoluted, but because The Mandalorian and Grogu came out, and we now know that this movie is getting made, it feels like we have more of a justified setup for those heroes to return.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I want that more than anything else.
Yes, I do too. I agree with you. I think most Star Wars fans do want to see the original 3.
You talk about low-hanging fruit. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get your little shears out, lop it down, and enjoy your feast.
Right.
Really.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I hope that that's the case. We'll see. I also want to say, it's nice to hear about The Mandalorian and Grogu getting made because this project is on more solid footing than any Star Wars movie that Disney has talked about making aside from the sequel trilogies. It's not like many of the other projects that have gotten axed after they got announced. It's not like even Dawn of the Jedi, which I'm very excited about. It's mentioned in this press release. I still think it's coming. I like Mangold as the director, but that hasn't been cast yet. That hasn't been completely written yet. This movie has a cast, it has costumes, it has everything going for it. So The Mandalorian and Grogu is happening. Like, it's going to happen on the schedule that it needs to.
Yeah, they said they're shooting it this year.
Exactly. And so I don't think we have any worries of this movie going down the same path as many others. Right.
No, you're exactly right. And again, my brain is just reeling from all the possibilities here from every different angle. And, oh, gosh. What do you want to talk about next?
I want to finish out talking about this article with one last thing where the wording says The Mandalorian and Grogu are leading the slate of Lucasfilm projects. And so I think with Dave's new position in this creative director position that we can expect to see more and more of the movies threaded together. I think that what we see in The Mandalorian and Grogu, there will then be some kind of connection to the coming Rey movie, that will have some kind of connection to Dawn of the Jedi, that will have some kind of connection to Dave's own movie. And I think all of these things will be a little more meticulously threaded together. Not tied together, not a story continuation, not a trilogy, but at least woven together a little more.
So that brings me to a fun question I had in my mind in regards to all this. What is the mechanism that you think that will exist?
So the easiest one is Hu Yang and whatever villain comes to fruition, because you can have an ancient threat from the Dawn of the Jedi movie begin to resurface during The Mandalorian and Grogu. The heroes have to defeat it in Dave Filoni's movie, and the repercussions of this conflict can pop back up in Rey's movie. And so I think Hu Yang and the villain are the two ways that you can really tie these things together.
And so I agree with you 100%. That's a great idea. But I also want to say, like, because this is a Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and we have so much left to discover about Grogu specifically, I wonder if that could be a mechanism that threads these movies together. Because, like, God forbid we get a Mandalorian character die, right? And, you know, because we love our characters. I mean, it is what it is, though. Darth Vader. But, like, so that means, like, Grogu could exist in this Rey film. He should by rights, right? And he's going to be this awesome power, being this Force user, Mandalorian Jedi person, and then we don't even know what species Yoda and Yaddle and Grogu, and so what character existed of this species 25,000 years ago?
Right.
What role did they play? And so. I think it would be such a fun plot element if we get something revealed about who this species is. I mean, because that sounds like an awesome quest. Where'd you come from? I need maybe, speculate about how to handle a problem that Grogu has or something, and we're on this self-actualization discovery for Grogu, and then we get these tie-ins to these other movies. I think it's such an awesome plot point.
Yeah, I absolutely
We need
agree.
to submit our resumes to Lucasfilm.
There's nothing to say that the Prime Jedi couldn't be a member of this species. I only hope that they always maintain the mystery. I never want to find out anything about this species, where they're from, what they're called, because this was George's intention, and I want to continue to honor George's legacy in that way.
So, Carter, I want to get a little bit more in on some of the details of this. We talked a little bit about this being like a self-actualization thing for Grogu. First words, that's kind of maybe obvious, maybe a little hopeful, preserving that mystery just a little bit. But, and I understand it's too early to speculate, but what could these two characters be doing? What kind of quest are they on that's going to unlock some power, or what kind of peril are they going to be in here, do you think? That's the big question with the way that season 3 left us, is there's not really a grand conflict. Like Ahsoka is what set up this grand conflict for us with Thrawn. And so that's why he's the most low-hanging fruit. But as you said, there's always a chance that they can go on a quest about Grogu, but that also feels like that was done. Like they gave him to the Jedi, he wanted to come back, and now there's no real reason for them to go find anything else about Grogu personally other than augmenting and expanding his Force abilities. So there's going to come something that has to threaten either Navarro, Mandalore, or both, and for now I can't imagine anything other than Thrawn, unless they're going to fork Thrawn and the Night Sisters, and the Night Sisters become some threat. That'd be a fun
but
adversary.
Thrawn isn't the threat for whatever reason. And I'm not sure how or why that would happen, but those are just the directions I'm leaning right now.
See, I want to say, there's going to be this training montage of Grogu, and just like we saw with Luke Skywalker and Grogu, but Din and Grogu, kind of like a leveling up thing, similar to what we saw in season 3 with the paintballs, like I said. And then there's going to be some peril that builds off of that, where Grogu comes into his element and is able to be this really awesome Force-using Jedi. And is there anything else to expound on that? I mean, like, is Grogu going to be overpowered? I mean, because in past podcasts, we speculate about how, Tar Vizsla and these awesome, powerful Mandalorian Jedi. And now we have another Mandalorian Jedi who is back from another galaxy. And so what if these two cross paths? That seems kind of silly to speculate about, but it's not off the table.
Right.
And so you talk about a Mandalorian Jedi team up. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that we have the potential. We have to remember that Ezra's back. We have to remember that Jason Syndulla can come back, and that these characters can cross over. I mean, Carson Teva is the obvious link in the TV shows, but we know that these characters cross over all the time. And so there's going to be some mix of what happened in Ahsoka, and I really think that the biggest speculations will begin to come after Skeleton Crew, because after Skeleton Crew is when everything's really going to be ratcheting up. The other thing that this means is that Celebration Japan is going to be crazy.
Yeah. We're saving up for that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You got your ticket yet?
Yeah. That's every dollar sent to the Patreon goes to the Celebration
so we got to be
Japan.
there. I'm going to go make sure my documents are in order right after this. Another small thing I want to cover is I know we kind of saw it in season 3 of Din Grogu and Din Djarin in his Naboo and one starfighter fighting the pirates. And we speculated an immense amount of some really cool Star Wars versus the captured Gozanti and all this other stuff,
right.
versus the forces of Moff Gideon, right? And we were kind of left out on that. We got some cool scenes with the TIE fighters chasing them, but we saw this awesome TIE fighter force that we didn't get to see a finality from. So, kind of like I said, how Grogu was left on the table a little bit. I really think the Star Wars was left on the table a little bit.
Right.
And so I want to see, if this is the team up movie between Grogu and Din Djarin, I want to see what they can pull together in this element of being a pilot and co-pilot of this N1 starfighter, or even a Grogu being his own. I mean, because this is a big deal. Remember,
Right.
this was like a breadcrumbs thing of Mando was teaching Grogu how to be a pilot.
Right.
Even on what's the name of the other ship, the first ship that they had, that Mando had in season
The
22?
Razor Crest.
The Razor Crest. So Mando was even teaching Grogu how to operate the Razor Crest, right? And so now he's got this Naboo starfighter, and maybe there's the Imperial remnant out there who's doing some stuff, and maybe these guys would be easy pickings. I want to see a Star Wars with Grogu and Mando going at it.
Well, this even begs the question of when do you think this movie could take place? Are we going to have a slightly aged up Grogu? Are we going to have a Grogu that's a little more coordinated? I mean, he's never going to be fast. We already know Yoda was slow. He's slow. There's probably not.
Yeah.
You don't develop a little bit of quickness between there, probably, but he could have developed some more coordination and some more capability. I mean, Yoda could pilot a starfighter just fine.
Right.
And so, what do you think that there's a chance this movie is a few years down the line and that we're going to see some physical maturation for Grogu?
No.
You think he'll be
No.
identical? You think he'll be not? And I'm not saying anything beyond a toddler, but you think he's baby Yoda, same thing.
So what I think is going to happen is we got that. What do you call that closeout that we saw at the end of Mando season 3, where he's sitting on the porch?
Yeah.
I think that fisheye is going to. We're going to be sitting there, fresh popcorn, giant soda, sitting next to each other with our notepads out, ready to go. We're going to see this fisheye. It's going to span back out, and here comes Grief Karga.
Oh, no
I got another
way.
mission for you.
I don't think
No,
it can be that.
I think that'd be fun. That's silly.
That
whatever.
would be fun. That would be fun.
But whatever.
Yeah, I do. I don't think that there's going to be much of a time jump either. I think there will. I mean, ever so slightly. We know that the Ahsoka season 1 happened after the Mandalorian, so all of those events will have taken place. The events of Skeleton Crew will have taken place. So I think a few months will be safe to assume. But anything beyond that, it'll be pure speculation. And there won't be anything. It's not going to be 20 years after. I mean, that's just not going to happen because then we're running up into the sequels. And so it's gonna only be at most a couple of years.
Yeah. Somewhere in that time frame, you're exactly right. And the last thing I kind of want to do, is there anything else we can talk about Ahsoka season 2? Like we talked about, we saw the Ahsoka on the hand, right?
Yep.
And on the hand of the father. And so what's going to happen here?
It's tough to speculate because with Dave Filoni's interview surrounding his creative director position, he doesn't even know where it's going to go yet because of Ray Stevenson's passing.
Yeah, well, but I mean, they figure that out, it sounds like, right? With the whole Balin skull?
I'm not sure about that one.
Are they going to be chasing ghosts this whole time?
Yeah, we don't really know yet. And that concept art points to the fact that this is going to be about that journey with Balin, but it really could only be the first couple episodes that are that way, and then we move back to the original galaxy. Because if season 1 ties in Hera and Jason and Thrawn and all of these things, they really would leave them. They would have to get them included in the Mandalorian if Ahsoka season 2 is all focused on Peridea.
Right. Yeah. I think. How do you think is Ahsoka going to get back to the original galaxy and all that, or is she going to die? I know we speculated about that a bunch.
I've been bouncing around on that back and forth. I think that she will probably meet her fate in Dave's movie.
Okay.
That's my new answer. My old answer was that she dies in her show, but I think now she's going to die in his movie.
Yeah, it's interesting to speculate about, but that's all I just wanted to add to this discussion. Anything else you can think of?
No, man, I think that's all we can cover. This is a sparse article, but it's worth talking about. It's worth breaking down. We can expect this year and next year to just continue to get leaks and rumors and a deluge of news, especially with the fact that they're going into production soon.
Yeah, and I think it was a good discussion. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but...
Well, you're just excited like everybody else is listening to this.
Really and truly, I want this, and I'm praying and I'm hoping all these other things that my 7-year-old son will be sitting next to me watching this, just excited as my daughter was to go see Barbie. I want both of my kids, 9 and 12, to be watching, excited to go see the Grogu movie.
And 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have a 2-year-old at that point. Oh my goodness.
So on that note, we can move into our How the Force Works question. For people who are new to the segment, this is just where our Patreon subscribers ask us a question, and we answer it live on the show. So without further ado, let's hop into How the Force Works. All right, so this week's question comes from Tristan, and Tristan asks, of all of the creatures in the Star Wars galaxy, which one would you want to keep as a pet?
So I got a couple qualifying questions. Is a horse a pet? Because if we had this discussion 120 years ago, it'd be a conveyance before it was a pet.
Sure, I'd say it's a pet.
That's not how the Force works.
I think pretty much anything can be a pet. I mean, Boba Fett and Jabba both considered that Rancor a pet.
So that's mine.
Yeah, okay.
Because I want a pet that is very menacing and threatening, but also a really cool mount.
Right.
To terrorize whoever I want to terrorize.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, the Rancor is really, it's kind of it's an obvious knee-jerk reaction. Because that was mine immediately. Okay. I was like, well, that's very clearly a Rancor. But I won't use that one because you used one, obviously.
That's too easy, so we should pick a different one?
You can choose that one if you want. I mean, mine was going to be Lothcat because I already own a cat. And I was like, this is pretty much the same thing. Merle was adorable. And so I think it'd just be easy to take care of. But like... Yeah. Salacious B. Crumb, the Kowakian monkey lizard, you could have a comedian around you all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But he's also kind of a little asshole. Like, it's not always hilarious.
A Rancor would be really cool, but I also think it'd be terrible. I mean, you imagine feeding that thing.
Yeah, just how much it costs to feed him or to clean up his mess.
I mean, like, hey, my friend Billy came over to your house the other day. Was he that kid just being a butthead? Well, I haven't seen him.
Right. Yeah. And he's taking dumps the size of couches.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's a few, like we're going to get in Star Wars Outlaws this year, we're going to get that new axolotl looking creature that I'm not sure what it's called yet. I don't think we know the name of it yet.
Yeah. I mean, and like, you could go into other things. An Acklay. What are those other two creatures?
The Reek.
Yeah.
The Nexu.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can't really call those pets. They're more like beasts of servitude, I guess, in that point.
Right.
But, I mean, shades of gray, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's some people, it's wrong to keep cats and dogs.
So if we're talking about the Star Wars universe, and we can be anybody, do anything in the Star Wars universe, and we have this Coliseum that we subject our gladiator slaves to, having an Acklay and the Nexu as a pet, that's not off the table.
No, it's not. You're absolutely right. It's not. Well, and then also, what is the definition of pet? Because BD-1, I mean, he's basically like a dog.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, he's
droid is.
Like, yeah. Well, no, C-3PO's not, and K-2SOs. I mean, they speak and are human shaped, and so it's like way different to call them a pet, even if they are just property. We are not droids' rights activists at Star Wars Station, but. The other ones like BD-1 just beeps and whistles, walks around and is small. It also does not have that much capacity for thinking. Like, at what point does he become a pet?
Yeah, neither does Dio. Barely BB-8, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, BB-8 maybe. I also got to say though that the character this is a sentient being, and so this is which Kowakian monkey lizards are like semi-sentient.
Yeah.
But this guy is like an actual person. But I think I could keep him as a pet because he's so small that he can't do anything about it. And what I'm talking about is
not an Anzellan.
No, not an Anzellan. That guy is. Those guys are too feisty. I think that they would, and too creative. I think that they would be able to get away from you way too easy. But
I mean, what's the difference between a slave and a pet? We have this discussion today. I mean, there are activists out there who draw no distinction.
They don't.
Horses and all this other stuff. And I don't really want to get into that, but an Anzellan would obviously be a slave.
Yes, they would. And I mean, I'm willing to say this guy probably would be, and maybe not this specific person, but Lulo Primarch from Solo, who has also shown up in the Bad Batch, which is really crazy. But anyway, he's a pop star in Star Wars, but he's like, if Elvis was still around, like that level. Like he's not the number one guy right now because he's not making modern music. He's the green fish person singing in that jar of pee in Solo.
Oh my god!
And so he's a person. Like he can think, but he sits in that vat and can't get out of it, and he's just in a jar. So if I took Lulo Primarch just from Dryden Voss's yacht and stuck him on my shelf, then is he my pet? Because he can't leave. I don't see this guy getting out of that situation.
Yeah.
And so you could be serenaded by the beautiful Galusian tones of Lulo Primarch all the time, and he could be your pet.
Yeah, well, not only that, you could pump out award-winning records and just have your own cash cow.
Yeah, exactly. But again, at what point does this is slavery again? Because this guy is sentient. And so if I can't take Lulo Primarch, if I can't just walk away with this jar, then I think I'll have to just stick with the Lothcat.
Well, I mean, and then, like, gosh, you get down to, you peel back the layers, indentured servitude. I mean, if you're feeding him, cleaning his tank, I mean, he's not locomotive, right? He has to be cared for.
Yeah,
so, I
think
as long as you're
universe.
coming up with an equitable exchange of goods and services,
well,
that's
then
not slavery.
You become his manager. Then you just
but what's he
stole
spend his
him
money
from his
on?
last
You know,
manager.
I don't know. What's he going to do? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I assume that he is so he can because he can talk, so he can sing. So I assume he just has a guy, his manager, carry him around. He's like, "Hey, set me down on this table. I want to talk to these people." And then you set him down. And be like, "All right, if you need me, chirp me. I'm gonna go to the bar and get a drink." And he's just sitting there. And so if a natural disaster occurs, he doesn't want to be in that position.
Yeah.
But if he's just hanging out, I think he just by nature of the way his species works has to do that.
No, so, I mean, maybe go to his planet and say, hey, anybody want to go see the galaxy? You can fly on my ship.
Right, yeah. All you got to do is live in this jar.
Oh, by the way, you got to be able to sing really well.
Yeah, I think that they'd be good pets. I think they'd be good pets. I mean, look.
Pets with quotations.
In the Star Wars universe, people eat Ewoks. Like, they sell Ewok jerky. And those guys very clearly can think and talk. And so it's the Star Wars line for what qualifies sentience is totally different than the real world line for what qualifies sentience.
It's based on your culture's moral values, and I mean, there's stuff you can't even fathom in the Star Wars universe, right? I mean, the Transitions are overtly slavers, but they don't see themselves that way,
right? And it's, I mean, they don't see themselves that way, and it's not like most polite members of galactic society won't engage with trade with Trandoshans. They know about the species. They know they kill Wookiees. They hunt them for sport. Doesn't stop them from, if you're selling noodles on Dayu, letting a Trandoshan come buy your noodles.
Yeah.
Where in the real world, if we knew that, obviously that would stop us. That would stop a lot of things. And so it's just definitely a different tone there.
Yep. That's a fun question.
That was a fun question. Thanks a lot, Tristan. And if you have a fun question for us, all you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Go to the Jedi Knight tier or above, and then you can start submitting questions, and we love answering the questions here on the show.
Yeah, we do. Especially ones like this. They really get you thinking, and I like the ones that have real world, like, parallels. We're talking about pets and slaves and this and that.
Right. Yep, I absolutely agree.
I don't want to own a slave for any reason.
Yeah, no,
even a
absolutely
fantastical one. I'm not going to go snatch up an Anzellan and make him fix my cell phone every time it breaks.
He could crawl around. If you're having car troubles, though,
No.
he could just jump in there, squeeze under the hood.
I could go hire him for probably pretty cheap.
Probably pretty cheap.
They don't need much. They don't
money.
consume much.
They don't. I honestly, if you told, we're sitting in just an office in my house right now, and it's decently sized. If I told an Anzellan that he works for me for the rest of his life, but he can have this entire space to himself, I feel like that's not a terrible deal for that guy. This is basically giving him a free house. This is the size of a house to an Anzellan.
I guess you're living on the outer rim where you can get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so that wraps up how the Force works, and we don't have a Star Wars news. We don't have a HoloNet news segment this week because
that's what the show is.
That was the show. We had the big news, got it out of the way, and Star Wars didn't announce very much this week because they were saving it up for this. And so all we're going to do is roll right into our last segment, which is the Star Wars moment of the week. All right, Colin, what is your Star Wars moment of the week?
This one's really fun. I had perchance got to go to Barnes & Noble, and I'm like, well, I want to go look at the books. And I found, I think they made this shelf just for me. On top is Star Trek books. The next,
We would be honored if you would join us.
And on the bottom shelf is Warhammer books.
Yeah, you should have
so
pulled
those
that shelf out of there. You
Yeah.
should have walked out of the store with it.
Those are my three top IPs that I love so much. And what I want to bring the attention to is that there's three shelves. Basically, one is High Republic, one is New Canon, and one is extended. What's the old term?
Legends.
Legends. Gosh, my goodness. Again, brains all over the place. And so I found out I was really lacking on my Legends content. I'm up on this High Republic stuff. I'm up on there's a couple of new books that I need to read. And so many of these books got to stir the memories. Brotherhood is up there. Eye of Darkness, all this other stuff. And it's a lot of fun. And I really need to pick up some of these Legends books. But ones The Path of Destruction by Drew Karpyshyn was on there. It was one that's really prominent on there. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of these sets for these retail are what they think will sell. And I was real heartened to see that all of these relatively old books are up there very prominent.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's every time you look at the Barnes & Noble Star Wars shelf, they've got good picks up there, and they've always got the best sellers for the Legends stuff and for the new stuff. And so it's always good to see. I mean, that's obviously how I got into Star Wars books, was just wandering into a Barnes & Noble. And the countless Star Wars fans have been able to get into Star Wars novels that way.
Yeah.
For my Star Wars moment of the week, we had a very late Christmas with part of my wife's family just because of the way schedules worked. And so I got my last Christmas gift pretty recently. And that last Christmas gift was Star Wars Outer Rim, the board game. And so I haven't played this game. I haven't pulled it out of the box yet, but I was elated to get this because you're playing as some kind of scoundrel on the fringes of the galaxy. And the players you can choose from that I'm aware of are Boba Fett, Chewbacca, Lando, Jyn Erso, and Han. And there's 3 others that I'm not sure who they are yet. I bet Cassian's one of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm just super pumped to play this.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. We need to go play.
Yeah, we definitely need to. Well, we both love Rise of the Rebellion. Or no, it's not Rise of the Rebellion. Age of
Rebellion. Oh, it's a Fantasy Flight game.
It is. Yeah, it's Age of the Rebellion. It's Age of the Rebellion. And so that game also made... This game is also made by Fantasy Flight, who make stellar Star Wars games.
They're bangers. They really are.
That's a great company. And so I was super happy to get Outer Rim. I know there's an expansion. Going to get a couple games of it under my belt and then probably get that expansion.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing is, from what I've read about the game, is it's mainly about the ships that you're flying. And there's a lot more ship options than there are character options. And so it's focused on the ships.
That's fun.
And like how you can upgrade your ships and stuff like that. So it's awesome. Cool. It looks really neat. But I'm looking forward to playing it. And that is my Star Wars moment of the week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So, Colin, that wraps up our show today. Big news. We had to talk about this. This was what was topical. This was what was now. This is what everybody wanted to talk about. And so I'm super heartened by the fact that we're getting new Star Wars. Obviously, we were getting new movies and TV shows already, but this is like a done deal. I'm sure this is going to come out on schedule. I'm sure it's going to be good. I'm sure it's going to bring people to the theaters, and I hope that's exactly what Star Wars needs to get people to really, really get into the IP and to just get this big resurgence in Star Wars fans that have felt like it's been waning the past couple of years.
Resurgence is exactly the word. I think that valley is going to trend up with stuff like this leading the way.
No, I think that we're going to have a really good year getting to talk about this. A lot of our news segments are going to be filled with leaks and scoops about this, and I think it's just going to be, as we continue to get closer, the hype's going to build up, as we've seen with many Star Wars movies and Star Wars eras. I mean, anyone who was alive at the time remembers The Phantom Menace. Anyone who was alive at the time remembers The Force Awakens, and I think the same will be said for The Mandalorian and Grogu.
It really will.
If they play their cards right, if they understand the way that Star Wars generates hype through toys, through merchandising, through just engaging with people, I think it has a lot of chance at success. And I'm really, really looking forward to the Chick-fil-A Grogu Happy Meal.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't.
So that wraps up our show for today. We appreciate you guys listening. And if you've made it this far, then that means all you got is one last thing that you got to do, because if you made it this far, you must love the program. And if you love the program, then you're going to head over to your Spotify or your Apple, and you're going to leave a 5-star review for us. If you just want to rate us, just put 5 stars down. That's totally okay. Or leave a review. Tell us what you like about the show. Tell us why you like the show. It helps other people when they're deciding to give us a listen. I always check podcast reviews. I read them before I listen to any podcast I listen to. And if they're bad, I don't listen to it. And so good 5-star reviews always help us get more listeners. And so we really, really appreciate it when you guys leave that. it just helps us game the algorithm. It helps us, figure out and fit in up there where we're going to be, where people are looking for Star Wars podcasts. It puts us higher.
Yep. So much more out there to engage with us. The Discord's always popping. Some stuff's always going in there.
You can find the link for that in the bio of this.
Yeah. Instagram, if you want your daily dose of Star Wars memes. How many times you post that? Like 3 times a day?
3 times a day. 3 times a day, every day except for yesterday because I forgot.
Well, that thing is soaring. It really is. And we've got lots of Instagram presence with Station Media. Warhammer Station is also on there. We got a couple other ideas in mind on that too. And Warhammer's kicking off a bunch. We're going to a tournament in Denver. If you want to meet us there, we'll definitely talk about Warhammer and Star Wars with you as much as you like. What else?
We got Twitter, Star Wars SW_station, and I was firing off a bunch of tweets about this news. And every time that there's big topical news, if you just can't wait for the show, then you can always go find a little bit of preliminary talk over there at SW_station. We've also got a Facebook group, Star Wars Station Cantina, and a Facebook page, Star Wars Station. So be sure to check those out. We just got a lot going on this year. We're really excited to keep bringing you guys Star Wars. We've got a good episode list for the first of the year, and we can't wait to keep bringing it to you guys.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of fun. It really is. I mean, with this news, everything coming out, this year's going to be really good.
Yes, yeah, it is. And it's going to be awesome. Can't wait for the Acolyte, can't wait for Skeleton Crew, and we can't wait for you guys to join us along the way. And so the last thing you got to do for us before we see you next week is stay wizard. Can't wait to keep bringing it to you guys.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of fun. It really is. I mean, with this news, everything coming out, this year's going to be really good.
Yes, yeah, it is. And it's going to be awesome. Can't wait for the Acolyte, can't wait for Skeleton Crew, and we can't wait for you guys to join us along the way. And so the last thing you got to do for us before we see you next week is stay wizard.